You know, to this day, it completely baffles me how one singular man can make so many stories this good. Yawara, Happy, Master Keaton, Monster, 20th Century Boys, Pluto, Billy Bat, all hits, no misses. But Naoki Urasawa has done it yet again with Asadora, his latest and currently ongoing series. At least 8 volumes in, I can safely say that Asadora is on track to be yet another masterpiece. And for some of you out there, I think this may very well be not only one of your favorite works by Naoki Urasawa, but potentially even one of your favorite manga of all time. To briefly go over the series' premise, Asadora follows this mysterious sequence of kaiju attacks spanning from 1959 all the way to the year 2020. The story itself begins in 1959 in Nagoya, Japan, following a 12-year-old girl named Asa Asada. She is one of 11 siblings in a fairly poor family and often completely forgotten about by pretty much everyone around her. One day, as Asa's mother is giving birth to her 12th child, Asa runs off to fetch a doctor to help deliver the baby. But as she does so, she catches a burglar in the act and gets kidnapped for ransom in retaliation, with the kidnapper mistakenly believing Asa to be the daughter of a wealthy doctor. Realizing his grave mistake, the kidnapper reflects on how his life spiraled down to such a low point, being a former military bomber pilot and war hero, now living in complete poverty and destitution after World War II. As time continues to pass, and nobody notices Asa's disappearance, they suddenly get hit by the Isewan Typhoon. Once the storm is settled, the kidnapper vows to turn himself in. But as they emerge, the two of them find that almost the entirety of Nagoya has been submerged, with Asa having no idea where on earth her home or her family are. With there being much more to this typhoon than meets the eye, it's up to Asa and the kidnapper to work together to survive. And gosh, does this series get really heavy, and yet also kinda crazy with everything surrounding the kaiju and contemporary post-war politics. It's paradoxically as grounded as the likes of Yawara or Happy, and yet almost just as crazy as Billy Bat. I think in general, it strikes a strong balance between elements you'd see from his sports romance manga as well as his mystery series, to the point that it almost feels like Asadora is the culmination of everything he's ever written in his career. So regardless of which of the two types of Urasawa works that you prefer, you'll love Asadora. And if you've never read an Urasawa work before, this is a great story to be your first. It gives you a good taste of the sheer range of elements that are typical of his stories. I'd recommend Asadora to pretty much anybody, but especially history nerds and fans of tokusatsu franchises like Godzilla, Pacific Rim, Ultraman, and Kamen Rider. This series is absolutely bonkers, with an intriguing mystery, gripping action, and fascinating political history behind it. But beyond all that, there's two aspects of this series that particularly stand out to me. The first thing that stands out to me is the cast. From the youngsters to the elderly, Asadora has a fantastic set of characters. I especially like Kasuga, the war hero turned kidnapper turned businessman, and River, the American musician turned military deserter. Both of their characters center around the impacts of war, and I'm curious to see the direction Urasawa takes with them. I'm also quite intrigued by Sho, Asa's childhood friend, who's training to compete as a runner in the Olympics. He reminds me a lot of Keiichiro from Happy with the way his character arc has been going so far. But the real highlight of the story for me is absolutely Asa, the protagonist. She is phenomenal. Easily one of my favorite Urasawa protagonists, up there with the likes of Miyuki, Kenji, and Tenma. She's incredibly kind, incredibly brave, and incredibly bold. She's got tenacity, perseverance, resilience, and conviction. And above all else, she's stubborn as hell. Asa's so inspiring that it gives the series a fairly optimistic tone, despite all the tragedy surrounding it. In a lot of ways, Asa feels like a mix of different elements from Miyuki from Happy and Kana from 20th Century Boys, with how strongly she parallels them both. Past the prologue of the story, Asa and the 3 younger siblings she finds after the typhoon get adopted by a woman named Kinuyo, who wants to raise them right until she can return them to their real parents if they're still alive. So the relationship between Asa and her siblings is pretty reminiscent of that of Miyuki and her 3 younger siblings, and the relationship between Asa and Kinuyo is very much akin to that of Kana and Yukiji. And if you're a fan of either Miyuki or Kana, I think you'll find Asa's character quite compelling as well. She's not completely like either of them. They all have drastically different personalities, experiences, and motivations after all, but the parallels between them are pretty interesting to see. Family means everything to them all. Besides the cast, the other thing that really stands out to me about Asadora is the ideas it explores thematically and how its exploration of said themes ties in with Urasawa's previous works. It's no secret that Urasawa's works serve largely as thematic complements to one another. For instance, Monster, 20th Century Boys, and Pluto are all about what it means to be human and what it means to lose one's humanity. In Monster particularly, Urasawa posits that to lose your humanity and become a monster metaphorically is when you value one person's life more than someone else's. In Asadora, however, we have a literal physical giant sea monster as the focal point of its mystery, which I think is kinda hilarious in context. But I do get the feeling that later on in the manga's serialization, the kaiju may be used as some sort of commentary on human nature and what it means to be human, thereby further tying it into the themes explored by Monster, 20th Century Boys, and Pluto. As it stands right now, there is also already some commentary on whether all lives are truly equal, with the story starting off at a time where families having over 10 children was not uncommon. One interesting topic the series explores is whether or not an only child's life is inherently worth more to their parents than a child with 11 siblings is worth to their parents. Does having more siblings make your life inherently less valuable, or at the very least, less valuable to your parents? Much like Monster, the series is adamant in the value that each individual life holds. Whether you're an only child or one of 12, you're all worth the same, as much as it might not always feel that way. And at the very least, I find that deeply moving. Beyond exploring the value and meaning of human lives and individuality, Asadora also delves into contemporary societal views of women. Very much like Yawara and Happy, Asadora is also another deeply feminist work. Now, Yawara and Happy serialized and took place over the course of the 1980s and 1990s, at a time where there were many strides taken for women's rights and where the social and political status of women in Japan changed greatly. In turn, this also translated over to a change in attitudes towards women in sports and in the workplace. But Asadora starts off in 1959, at a time where circumstances were quite different for women. It was only little more than a decade prior that women lacked voting, property, and inheritance rights. So while there were some significant advancements in the rights and opportunities that Japanese women had after the end of the Second World War, the adults of this time still very much grew up in a world without them. And so, in series that reflects in the general attitudes towards women and traditional gender roles, it's thus very interesting to look at Asadora in conjunction with Yawara and Happy, because you can physically see the commonalities and differences between these attitudes across different decades. In Asadora, there's one subplot after the first time skip where Asa's friend Miyako becomes inspired to try and become a wrestler in spite of her facing significant opposition from her mother, and how out of the norm that would be during the 1960s. Sports at the time were very much regarded as a masculine thing, something like wrestling especially so. Beyond the exploration of the sports world, in another subplot centering around Asa's friend Yone trying to become a world-famous idol, the series also delves into the realities of the entertainment industry, with how it has historically exploited young women. To me, this part of Asadora is one of the most fascinating aspects about the series, because it makes strong parallels to the real-life tragedy behind the life and demise of Marilyn Monroe. And it's also the first time that Urasawa has ever explored this sort of concept in any of his works. Now, as for themes aside from what I've mentioned thus far, Asadora also focuses heavily on family and adoptive parenthood, dreams, the value and potential life-changing nature of art and music, as well as the social, economic, and political impacts of warfare. Many of these are themes Urasawa has explored throughout his previous works too, but the way he has been able to synthesize all these different ideas he's had over the course of his career into one ambitious story is seriously impressive. It feels like Asadora is the one Urasawa work that captures everything about him and what he's wanted to communicate through all his stories. And to an extent, I think some of his core messages hit the hardest in Asadora, with it being so grounded in real history, as is especially evident in the way it covers the socio-political impacts of World War II and the Vietnam War. All in all, I couldn't recommend this series enough. Heck, it's probably the single best thing I've read all year long, but I will say that this year-long wait for each 7-chapter volume is definitely going to hurt. If you've already caught up with Asadora, let me know your thoughts and feelings on the series, as well as what direction you're expecting the story to take. I myself am very invested in where things are going to go with Sho and River. But with that in mind, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more Urasawa related content. And if there's anything you'd like to see me cover in the future, whether Urasawa related or not, please let me know in the comments.